Okay, so here we go. Welcome everyone. If this is your first time, I see some new names. Um, Quick reminder what we do here. So the goal is just to spend literally less than 15 minutes, actually, even though it's called 15 minutes of positivity. It's already 12:01, so we got 14 minutes left. But the idea is to take a few minutes every day, Monday through Friday, where we get together and we just practice certain aspects of positivity. And the underlying premise is that positivity is a skill, and it consists of, I'll call them these other micro skills. So everything from mindfulness to gratitude to attention training. There's so many different elements to what it means to adopt a positive mindset, and the idea is that we can intentionally do this. And neurologically, what we're doing is we're activating what's called self-directed positive neuroplasticity. So we're literally changing the structure and function of our brain just by activating certain neural networks of the sort that we want, right? In contrast to the ones that we don't necessarily enjoy, such as depression and anxiety and OCD and sort of many of the things that bring us here in the first place. Okay, so in the United States, the last few days have been kind of nutty, or the nuttiness continues, I should say. And I have to admit that I've been feeling like the last 48 hours, I've just been feeling down. There's just been this general sense of this, almost like an oppressive sense of there's just so much going on, so much feels out of control. There's some trepidation around what's going to happen in the future. And then if I really pay attention to the inner dialogue that's happening, I'm noticing this part here that I want to introduce and that I want to explore today, called the inner critic. So meaning I'm noticing that my mindset, or there's the inner narrative where I take on a certain amount of responsibility for the heaviness or the sadness or the grief that I'm feeling. And there's some sort of element of like a kind of finger pointing that says, Ollie, you shouldn't, there's this interesting tone of voice that I'm quite familiar with in my head. And this is a teacher of mine, a good friend of mine. His name is Mark Coleman. He lives here locally. He is a meditation teacher that I've learned a lot from. And he talks about the inner critic. He says the inner critic is the voice inside our heads reminding us that we are never good enough. It's who or what lurks behind the insidious thoughts that can make us second guess every action and doubt our own value. Um, yeah, so the question is, like, where does this inner critic come from? Why, when things feel difficult or challenging, why is it so instantaneous for so many of us that it becomes so personal, right? There's this idea that it's like there's something wrong with me that's causing this. And the obvious answers are, well, it has to do with how our nervous system develops when we are infants and then toddlers and school age kids, and what's our family of origin like, what's the society that we're growing up in, what are the specific experiences that we've had, and all of this contributes to a kind of inner narrative that says, this is why things happen the way they happen to me. And then you end up being, like in my case, I'm almost 54 this month, and it's fascinating to me that I still have this pretty strong voice in between my ears that I need to work with on a daily basis. I need to, yeah. If I'm not careful, the inner critic kind of takes over and runs rampant. So the question is, how do we work with the inner critic? And guess what? There are these two. This is what I learned from Mark. There are really sort of two key strategies that we can use. The first one is mindfulness. So really being aware when the inner critic is active and what the inner critic is saying. And then of course it boils down to compassion, right? Being able to meet the inner critic with some other part of ourselves that has the ability to be kind and open-hearted and understanding, yet still boundaried, right? So this idea of fierce compassion. So I thought, let's let's explore that today. So go ahead and close your eyes. And as always, let's start just by noticing the here and now. So sitting wherever you find yourself sitting, just notice the sensation of the body sitting in a chair or in your car, wherever you are, body breathing. The ears are hearing, the skin is sensing. Just take a step back and notice what is happening right here, right now. Acting with the what I call the telltale signs of breath. Noticing the body's breathing. And the way we know the body's breathing is because we can sense breath in our nostrils, in our throat, our chest, and our belly. And we're activating our mindfulness capacity simply by becoming aware of what's happening right now. And using the mind to bring back in memory a situation. Maybe it's recent, maybe it's happening to you today, or it could be in a long distant memory, but of a time where it felt like you weren't doing as well as you'd like to be. Maybe you said something wrong, something insensitive. Maybe you did something, but something where you notice probably a pretty familiar internal voice. Maybe sounds a bit berating, judgmental, critical. And using the same capacity that we have when we become mindful of breath. So simply noticing how breath passes through the body. See if you can simply notice how the inner critic passes through the mind in that situation. Not attaching to any of the messages or the criticisms, but simply noticing the process. Usually the inner critic is very repetitive. It's pretty much the same narrative, the same stories, the same words. You've probably experienced them thousands of times before. And so today, let's just see if we can take a step back and just notice those wheels turning, observing from a distance. The inner critic's not bad. Just think of the inner critic as really young part of myself, unskilled, unable to communicate kindly, that is ultimately trying to be supportive, drawing my attention to something that needs attention. And this is where compassion enters the picture. As you see the witness the inner critic tripping and stumbling and spinning, see if there's another part of you that can hold that young part of you with compassion and love, kindness. Inner critic oftentimes is like a 3-year-old throwing a fit. And as adults, we can be with that, make space for that, because we're bigger than that. So this is the intersection of mindfulness and compassion. We can see it clearly, we can make space for it, we can get curious. What is the inner critic trying to say? And bringing your attention back to breath coming and going in the body. And then take a deep breath in, long, slow exhale, and hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And one more deep, mindful inhale, long, slow exhale, hold, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then open your eyes and come on back. And that's all the time we have for today. Let's see. The invitation, I think, is to see if you can stay connected with a sense of awareness and mindfulness regarding the inner critic, so that voice in our heads, and see when you notice the tone getting edgy or a little bit intense. See if you can remember to bring some compassionate mindfulness to the equation. So I hope that was helpful. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. I hope to see you all tomorrow. Take care, everyone.